Sir.
All right. Good afternoon, all of you. And today we are going to start up with, I'm going to introduce you what is cognitive psychology, right? This is one module of our syllabus. And let me just give an introduction, basic introduction on cognitive psychology, right? So let's go to the first. What is cognitive psychology? Cognitive psychology involves the study of internal mental processes, all of the things that go on inside your brain, including perception. Now, what is perception? Can you see this image? Perception is the way in which something is regarded, understood, or interpreted. So, perception, you can see this image, right? The left side, the person on the left side, right? He can see this digit as number 6, and the person on the right side could see it as number 9. So this is called as perception. Okay, the way in which something is regarded, understood, or interpreted. So it cannot be the reality. So perception cannot be the reality. So next, perception, thinking, memory, attention, language, problem solving, and learning. While it is a relatively young branch of psychology, it has quickly grown to become one of the most popular subfields. So cognitive psychology is a subfield of uh, psychology. Okay, so there are numerous practical applications for this cognitive research, such as providing help coping with memory disorders, increasing decision making accuracy, finding ways to help people recover from brain injury, treating learning disorders, and structuring educational curricula to enhance learning. So the practical applications of cognitive research. So these are the practical, that means the importance of cognitive psychology. So you can increase the decision making accuracy, or else you can help to cope up with memory disorders and treating learning difficulties. So these are the importance of cognitive psychology. The next paragraph, learning more about how people think and process information not only helps researchers gain a deeper understanding of how the human brain works, but it allows psychologists to develop new ways of helping people deal with psychological difficulties. So here, what they, in the cognitive psychology, what they do is they learn more and more about how people think and process information. So everything, all the actions that that is resulted uh, is because of thinking. Okay, so here in cognitive psychology, mainly we are dealing with the thinking and the processing of information. So this is one of the, as I told you, this is one of the subfields of psychology. Okay, one of the important subfields of psychology. Right. For example, by recognizing that attention is both a selective and limited resource, psychologists, give me a minute, give me a second. Sorry for the disturbance. And for example, by recognizing that attention is both a selective and limited resource, psychologists are able to come up with solutions that make it easier for people with attentional difficulties to improve their focus and concentration. So here, so what they do is a psychologist, a cognitive psychologist, what he or she does is that they recognize the person's, the ability of, I mean, like, ability of thinking. So how they, what the cognitive psychologists do is, right, they are dealing with, as I told you, they are dealing with concentration, attention, and the thinking ability of a particular person. So what they do is, when they study this particular person's attention or concentration ability or thinking patterns, they can help that person to, or they can guide that person to come up or to come over many psychological difficulties. Right. Findings from cognitive psychology have also improved our understanding of how people form, store, and recall memories. So, by different researchers done on cognitive psychology, they have improved the understanding of how people form, store, and recall memories. Right now, memories mean no. Actually, a memory means actually it's some sort of an information that is formed and stored and recall. That is what actually the brain does, right? So it forms some information and it stores the information, and whenever needed it recalls the information. So those are called as memories. So by the research done in cognitive psychology, it has improved the understanding of how people form, store, and recall memories. By knowing more about how these processes work, psychologists can develop new ways of helping people improve their memories and combat potential memory problems. So this is one importance. That means by knowing more about the process, how the mind works, and how we can recall memories and how we can improve it. So this has been helped in this cognitive psychology field. Psychologists can develop new ways of helping people. So by studying about this cognitive psychology, what they do is the psychologists have the ability to help the people in different new ways how to improve their memories. Or you might have seen a lot of trainers, like psychological trainers, right, who even in your school, there are corporate trainers like motivational trainers, psychological trainers. What they do is they use this cognitive psychology in order to improve the memory skills of different individuals. They have different techniques, right, to improve these skills. Right, did you all understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, good. For example, psychologists have found that while your short-term memory is quite short and limited, now short-term memory lasting for 20 to 30 seconds and capable of holding between 5 and 9 items. Rehearsal strategies can improve the chances that information will be transferred to long-term memory, right? Which is more stable and durable. Now, this is, I have highlighted this because this is something important. So, in this, what they say is now memory, there are two categories. One is short-term memory, the other one is long-term memory. What we do is now, when you just drop onto a street and when you walk along a street, what you could see is you can see a lot of, you capture a lot of things into your memory. But out of these things, there is a limited amount of information that will go into your long-term memory. So now what I'm going to tell you here is that short-term memory means which lasts only for a few seconds, right? It can be, sometimes it can be some numbers, or it can be some individual faces. Now just imagine now, can you remember anyone whom you met on a street, right, 1 week before? Like it should not be any one of your relatives or known person, but a random person. Can you remember that person's face? You won't be able to remember, right? So that is because it was in your short-term memory. But actually, like within 5 to 6 minutes, like you will be able to remember immediately. You will be able to remember that person, but after a couple of days you won't be able to remember that person. But now when you think of your childhood, when you go back to your childhood, what happens, you can remember some incidents which had happened long time ago. So that means that had gone to your long term memory. So some incidents you would have forgotten. So that is because of the short term memory. So what they are saying in this para is that short term memory, the information which is in the short term memory, can be transferred to the long term memory by rehearsing again and again. Rehearsing means by programming it again and again. So I told you in the last class, I told you how the neural connections are formed from an infant to a 6 months baby to a one month baby, and thereafter to a 6-month baby, okay, a newly born baby, how the neural connections are available. So now what we do is by rehearsing, we increase the neural connections and make it stronger. So by increasing the short-term memory neural connections, we can make it, or we can transfer it into a long-term memory. By short-term memory, we can transfer it into a long-term memory. Is that clear for you? So by rehearsing, so whatever the things, now just imagine, whatever the things you do now, if you take so if you want to memorize something, if you want to memorize a book, what you do, you just repeatedly you read the same book again and again. So by rehearsing, uh, you can transfer the information to the long-term memory. Did you all understand that?
Yes, sir.
Good. So now what you got to do is you have to apply this even to your practical life. Whatever you need to remember, it can be a mobile number, it can be an address, it can be a person's personal information, right? Whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, you should be able to rehearse it. You should rehearse it over and over again in order to transfer that information into long-term memory. Right, now here comes the next topic. When do you need to see a cognitive psychologist, right? That means what is the proper situation that you should go and visit a cognitive psychologist? While many cognitive psychologists specialize in research and are employed by universities or government agencies, others take a clinical focus and work directly with individuals who are experiencing challenges related to different mental processes. They may work in hospitals, mental health clinics, or private practices. Now you can see here, cognitive psychologists are being hired or employed by universities. So why are these people employed by universities? They are employed as university lecturers, okay? Or else they can be employed for government agencies. And some are there who are employed in clinics, right? Medical, as they practice as medical practitioners. So these are the people who deal directly with individuals to help them to overcome their mental challenges. Okay, these are the people who directly deal with the people to overcome their mental challenges. Psychologists who work in this area often focus on a particular area of interest, such as memory, while others might instead choose to work directly on specific health concerns related to cognition, such as degenerative brain disorders or brain injuries. So there are some cognitive psychologists who are dealing only with memory. Now, if a child is not, I mean, like, not interested to study, even though the environment is suitable for that person to study, so it is advisable to take that person to a cognitive psychologist who is specialized in memory, right? So the other thing is, the other field is, some cognitive psychologists are interested in memory, whereas the others are concerned about cognition and degenerative brain disorders and brain injuries. Okay, let's go to the next slide. You will be able to get a clear idea. So these are the reasons that you should consult a cognitive psychologist. Now, the first disease, I think you all would have heard this. Have you all heard about this Alzheimer's disease, dementia? Have you all heard about it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me explain you. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurologic disorder that causes the brain to shrink. Now you can see on the left side of this image, you can see a normal brain, right? Normal brain. This is the brain cortex. The sulci means the foldings that are available on the brain, right? And you can see the white matter, because the brain is composed of two components, the white matter and the gray matter. And here they have mentioned the white matter. On the left hand side of the screen, you could see that it is a image of a normal person's brain, a transverse section of a normal person's brain, right? So here you can see the transverse section of a Alzheimer patient's brain. You can see the brain is shrinked. Okay, the brain is shrink. So this condition is known as the Alzheimer's disease. So actually we call it in common terms as dementia. Okay, that is the symptom of Alzheimer's disease, which is dementia, where or else we can, in common terms, you can also call it as memory loss. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurological disorder that causes the brain to shrink, atrophy, and brain cells to die. Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of dementia. A continuous decline in thinking, behavioral, and social skills that affects a person's ability to function independently. Okay, so that person cannot function independently. So have you all recently watched this movie as November Story? Did you, any one of you all watch this movie? The Tamil movie? Have you all
No,
watched it?
sir.
Yeah, please note down
Yes, sir.
that name, and anyone who has not watched that, please watch it, because it's a really good movie based on this Alzheimer's disease. Okay, it is some sort of a thing which is involved in crime, and the main reason behind this is this Alzheimer's disease. So the topic is November Story, right? So you all can I will just drop that on your chat box also. It's a must that you all can, if you can watch it, because it's very good. Okay, get that movie and watch it, right? So here you get the next is so this a patient with suffering with Alzheimer's disease is unable to do any function independently. So there should be a person to look after and take care of that particular Alzheimer's disease patient. Next is brain trauma treatment. Now we are discussing the reasons to consult a cognitive psychologist. That means why we should consult, the instances that we should go to a cognitive psychologist. Okay. The second one is brain trauma treatment. Brain trauma treatment is also known as traumatic brain injury. Okay, the traumatic brain injury is a disruption in the normal function of the brain that can be caused by a blow, a bump, or a jolt to the head. The head suddenly and violently hitting an object, or when an object pierces the skull and enters into the brain tissue. Now, it is due to a physical damage caused to the head. You can see in this image on the left side of your screen, you can see the portion of the front portion of the frontal lobe portion of the brain has been damaged. It has been red color. So that means it is damaged due to a blow, bump, or a jolt to the head. That means some sort of an external force attacking the head and causing damage. So this is known as traumatic brain injury. So this could result in your thinking process, and behavioral patterns might change. You won't be able to carry out any of your functions independently. So at an instance of this, you should go and definitely consult a cognitive psychologist. Okay, now you can see here the effects of traumatic brain injury, TBI. So these are the effects that could happen: the physical effects, behavioral effects, and the cognitive effects. Let's see. I'll just read a few. Okay, so physical effects, you can see that sleep disturbance, right? You will have a disturbance in sleep. You won't have a proper sleep. The next one is you will have a severe headache, a pain, right? And changes in your senses, right? And fatigue, right? And your digestion pattern can change. Next one, behavioral, right? Behavioral means you will be depressed, and you will have hot temper. That means you will get angry very fast. Anxiety, right? And changes in social skills. That means your behavior with others might change. Okay, so these are the effects of TBI. Next one is cognitive effects. Let's see this. This is the most important on the or related to this topic. Repeating things. Sometimes you can repeat the same thing again and again. So that is the result of TBI, traumatic brain injury. Forgetfulness. You might forget some matters. Okay. Trouble with attention. You won't be able to be attentive on anything. You won't be able to focus. You won't be able to concentrate on anything, right? On anything what you do. So these are all the effects of TBI. Next one, problems with communication. You won't be able to you will have a lot of problems with communicating with people, right? And you will have a lot of difficulty in processing and taking any decision, in decision making, you will have a lot of difficulty. So these are the effects of traumatic brain injury. And during such an instance, you should definitely meet a cognitive psychologist. The next is cognitive therapy for a psychological illness. So you have therapeutic treatments also in cognitive psychology. You have therapeutic treatments, right? Next one is interventions for learning disabilities. Now, if you have any learning disabilities, then you have to meet a cognitive psychologist. And if you have any perceptual or sensory issues, yes, then you have to go and meet a cognitive psychologist. Therapy for speech or language disorder. If you have any language disorders, right, then you have to definitely go and meet a cognitive psychologist. These are the duties of a cognitive psychologist, where you have to, the reason that you have to go and consult a cognitive psychologist. I have given around 6 examples for that. The next is the work of cognitive psychologists is essential for helping people. So did you all understand up to this point? Page number 3. Did you all understand up to page number 3?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Any doubts?
Yes, sir.
Do you all have any doubts?
No, sir.
Okay, good. Let's go to the page number 4. The work of cognitive psychologist is essential for helping people who have experienced issues with mental processes. While we tend to take abilities such as attention and problem solving for granted, perhaps because they are so woven into the fabric of our everyday existence, cognitive disruptions can create havoc in multiple areas of an individual's life. So this one, this para is very, very important. If you just go through the para very carefully, you can see that many people right now, it's a very common thing in our society that when they have any disabilities in attention, right, that means if they are difficult in focusing in a particular task, they just neglect it and they continue with their day-to-day work. But actually that can lead into a lot of, they have mentioned, it can result in a lot of havoc in multiple areas of individual. If you neglect that problem, what happens is it can affect multiple areas of an individual's life. So you have to immediately when you identify that you are having some sort of a difficulty in paying attention, or difficulty in concentrating, or difficulty in focusing, or difficulty in thinking, during any of these instances, you should definitely contact or consult a cognitive psychologist. You have to get their assistance in order to correct yourself. So here they have said that perhaps because they are so woven into the fabric of our day-to-day of our everyday existence. So that means they highlight the importance of a cognitive psychologist in our everyday existence. So it's very, very important to coordinate with a cognitive psychologist if we have any sort of above mentioned problems. Attention problems can make it difficult to focus at work or at school. Even relatively minor memory problems can make it a struggle to handle the demands of everyday life. Consider, for example, how negative thinking can interfere with your health and happiness. So now remember, attention problems, right? Attention problems can make it difficult to focus on work or at school. Yes, that's true. Now just imagine if you are going to school, if you are schooling, if a child is schooling, and if that child goes to school with a lot of problems the previous day at home, right, what happens is that student will have a lot of attention problems in school. So gradually, if that continues, that forms neurological connections within the brain, and that makes it permanent, and that student will have permanent attention problems within that student's life, throughout the student's life. So at that instance, we should definitely consult a cognitive psychologist. Okay. We all experience these negative thoughts from time to time, but some people may find themselves overwhelmed with pessimistic thinking patterns that make it difficult to function in daily life. These ruminations can lead to increased stress levels, pessimism, and self-sabotaging, and can even contribute to feelings of learning helplessness. Right now, what happens is thinking of these negative patterns, negative thinking pattern, negative thoughts. It's very, very dangerous to our life. It's very toxic because I have told you earlier that your brain cannot identify, but always remember this point, your brain cannot identify whether an information is true or whether it really happened or whether you fabricated that news, right? So brain is something which can believe anything what you feed. It's something, it's a very miraculous machine which can believe, right? It can believe and act anything what you feed it. If you feed a negative thought, it will act negatively. If you feed a positive thought, it will act positively. So what they say in this para is, if when you when you continuously feed negative thoughts, it can lead into stress levels, right? Pessimism, right? You can be pessimistic, right? And also finally it can result in helplessness, right? You can be helpless, right? You can suffer uh, yourself all alone. So because of these negative thoughts, because I always remember, the brain cannot figure out a real incident that had already occurred to you all, or it cannot differentiate a real incident with a fabricated incident. So always remember that. So whatever you feed is what will result through the brain. With the help of cognitive psychologists, people are often able to find ways to cope and even overcome such difficulties. So even in such difficulties, with the help of cognitive psychologists, you can overcome those difficulties. Therapy treatments rooted in cognitive research. Therapy treatments rooted in cognitive research focus on helping people change these negative thinking patterns and replace such thought with more positive and realistic ones. So in therapy treatments, cognitive therapeutic treatments, what they do is they replace these negative behaviors or negative thinking patterns with positive and realistic ones. Okay, so they replace it. Okay, right. Cognitive psychology, let's go to the next one. Cognitive psychology for mental health. In addition to adding to understanding of how the human mind works, in addition to the understanding of how the human mind works, the field of cognitive psychology has also had an impact on approaches to mental health. Before the 1970s, many mental health approaches were focused on psychoanalytic, behavioral, and humanistic approach. Can someone tell me, because last time we explained about the psychoanalysis. Who was the founder of psychoanalysis? Can someone give me the answer? Who was the father of psychoanalysis? I explained you earlier. Who was the father? Who was the founder of psychoanalysis?
Sigmund Freud.
Exactly, Sigmund Freud. Exactly. Now, behavior means, I think there is another philosopher known as B.F. Skinner, right? He is the main person of who found this behavioral. Right, psychoanalysis was found by Sigmund Freud, and behavioral patterns were discovered by B.F. Skinner, and humanistic approach. The so-called cognitive revolution that took place during this period put a greater emphasis on understanding the way people process information and how thinking patterns might contribute to psychological distress. Okay, so now in this cognitive revolution, what they understood was how a person's thought, that means how you think, will affect and create you stress, right? How your thinking patterns will affect your actions. So that is what resulted in cognitive revolution. Thanks to research in this area by cognitive psychologists, new approaches to treatment were developed to help and treat depression, anxiety, phobias, and other psychological disorders. So can someone tell me, what do you mean by depression? What is depression? Quickly give me an answer because we have limited time.
Stress.
Something else? Then what is stress? Can someone give me the answer? No, actually it's something like this. Now, before it comes to depression, there are some steps. Now, first thing is the main factor at the initial factor of depression is sadness. Okay, sadness will result in worry, right? If you continuously keep on worrying, what happens is it leads to uh, stress. It leads to stress, right? Continuously stressing out will lead to depression, and if the depression continues, what happens is the final effect would be mental disability, right? So this, at the stage, until the stage of depression, it can be cured, right? Until the stage of depression, that person can be brought back to normal with the help of psychological counselors and cognitive psychologists. Okay, so it's a continuous process. Now, sadness is the one which leads to worry, and when you continuously worry, it leads to stress, and continuous stress will lead to depression, and continuous depression would lead to mental disability. So that is how it takes place. Next is anxiety. So what do you mean by phobia? Can someone tell me what is phobia in simple terms? Phobia means fear, right? You have, for example, hydrophobia. Hydrophobia means fear to water. Meaning, some people, they have some fears to, they fear water, right? And the other one is acrophobia. Acrophobia means the fear to spiders. Some people, they have they have this fear of spiders. Okay, and next. Yes, for all these types of illnesses, you can consult your psychologist. Cognitive, and also remember now, if this disconnects, please rejoin again. Okay, if this disconnects, please rejoin again. Cognitive behavior therapy and rational emotive behavior therapy are two methods in which clients and therapists focus on the underlying cognition that contributes to psychological distress. Therapists can be therapists can help clients identify irrational beliefs and other cognitive distortions that are in conflicts with reality, and then aid them in replacing such thoughts with more realistic, healthy. So what does the therapist do? So what does this cognitive psychological therapist do is they identify the irrational beliefs. That means the inappropriate beliefs of that particular individual, and they replace that beliefs with good thoughts, healthy thoughts, realistic thoughts and beliefs. So that is what they do. They don't do a surgery, they don't carry out a surgery and do it. But what they do is mentally, they remove these irrational beliefs from that person's mind, and they replace those thoughts with realistic, healthy beliefs, right? If you are experiencing symptoms of a psychological disorder that would benefit from the use of cognitive approach, you might see a psychologist who has specific training in these cognitive treatment methods. So if you all are having any difficulties in these areas which I discussed earlier, yes, you all can definitely consult a psychological counselor or psychologist, right? These professionals frequently go by titles other than cognitive psychologists, such as psychiatrist, clinical psychologist, or counseling psychologist. So these are the titles that they carry in order to treat these types of individuals. But many of these strategies they utilize are rooted in the cognitive tradition. If you're unsure of a practitioner's discipline or approach, just ask him or her. So before you go and meet this type of person, you have to just forward your problem to them, and then you should know whether they are able to help you out. The impact of cognitive psychology. As you can see, the field of cognitive psychology is both broad and diverse, yet it touches on so many aspects of daily life. Research on cognitive psychology may at times seem academic and far removed from the problems you face in everyday life, yet the findings from such scientific investigation play a role in how professionals approach the treatment of mental illness, traumatic brain injury, and degenerative brain disease. Thanks to the work of cognitive psychology, we can better pinpoint ways to measure human intellectual abilities, develop new strategies to combat memory problems, and decode the working of the human brain, all of which ultimately has a powerful impact on how we treat cognitive disorders. The field of cognitive psychology is a rapidly growing area that continues to add to our understanding of the many influences that mental processors have on our health and daily lives. From understanding how cognitive processors change over the course of a child's development to looking at how the brain transforms sensory inputs into perceptions, cognitive psychology has helped us gain a deeper and richer understanding of the many mental events that contribute to our daily existence and overall well-being. So that is all that we are going to discuss for the day. So now in summary, in a nutshell, I can explain you that this cognitive psychology is actually an important can all of you all see this? All of you all, could you all hear me? Could all of you all hear me?
Not clear, sir.
Now is it clear? Now is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, I think now you all can hear me, right? Somehow, Mariam, Imara, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Right.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
okay. Right. Now let's, this is the end of the lesson. And I think someone has asked what is pessimistic. Actually, pessimism